Oops. Hello, hello. All right. Today we are talking about the relationship between systems and rhythms and your habits. So systems, rhythms, processes, that's the stuff we're talking about all the time over here. And today, really diving into where your habits come into play. Do they have anything to do with it? If so, what? That is what we're going into. I'm also trying a little experiment today. We'll see how it goes. So I have Facebook Live on my desk, on my laptop. I have Instagram Live on my phone. So I'm going to be looking back and forth. But wherever you're watching, say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. And if it goes well, maybe I'll try this again sometime, so I can talk to you in both places. So I've probably mentioned on lives before that I've been reading about habits lately. I've been pretty fascinated by the whole thing, and it's just something I've been thinking a lot about in my own life, in my business, in the way I work with my clients. And I recently finished this one, Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin. She also wrote The Happiness Project, if you're familiar with that book, which I also really love. But this one is all about habits. And so that's kind of going to be the basis of the live today. I found a lot of connections in there, of course, tips for my own habits and things to work on in my own life. But the thing that got me the most excited was it really got me thinking about how I could use the strategies she talks about to help my clients be more successful in implementing their own new systems and rhythms in a sustainable way, in a way that we can actually keep up with and keep going and make work for people in the long term. So last week I talked about having a maintenance plan for your systems, and I really feel like this one goes hand in hand. If you can develop habits around using those streamlined systems and processes and routines in your home and your business, they start to become second nature and they add even more ease to your days. So today I'm going to share some of my big takeaways from the book. I'm going to share some ways, just ideas of how you can use some of Rubin's strategies to support the structure around your own home and business. So I'm super excited. I think it's going to be a good one. If you're new to me, hello again. My name's Jenna of J-Lane Virtual Solutions, and I'm a systems and rhythms coach for moms with businesses. Basically, I help you spend less time on the things that have to get done so that you have more time and energy for the things that you want to do. You can create more joy, and we do that through simple systems and rhythms for both your home and your business. Because if you are a mom running a business from home, those are two huge pieces of your life that often overlap with each other, and instead of kind of crashing up against each other, we want them to be able to support one another and feel like parts of a bigger whole, right? So one of the reasons that I was really drawn to this topic of habits is that it can be really exhausting to feel like we are constantly deciding what to do next, what to do with our time, how to do it, when to do it, right? For a while, I designed and set up automated sales funnels as one of my primary offers. And with a funnel, the underlying concept is to reduce what is called decision fatigue. Because basically, we make an unbelievable number of decisions on a daily basis in our modern society. So when someone's setting up a sales funnel, the idea is that instead of giving someone a whole bunch of options and saying, here, you have to pick, you're instead walking them through a process where each step is a yes or no, right? Do you want this freebie? Yes or no? Do you want to book a call with me? Yes or no? Do you want this one offer that I think is right for you? Yes or no? Instead of having to weed through all this extra information. And I see this as kind of the same concept when it comes to our systems and our rhythms and our habits. They all help remove the need for us to decide on certain parts of our day. They allow us to make fewer decisions and still get done the things that need to get done, right? So for example, if you have a morning routine that you really love, you don't have to decide every morning what the first thing is you're going to do when you get out of bed, because you already know what it is. You do the same thing every day. You can move through that part of your day with minimal mental effort, right? Like, I cannot maintain a complicated morning routine, but what I know I do now is I roll out of bed, I wash my face, I get myself kind of together, get myself a glass of water before I wake up the kids. Like, I don't have to think about it. I know what that first step is, and it makes it, I mean, I'm not a morning person, so it's never easy to get out of bed, but it makes it a little less awful when I know, okay, all I have to do now is go into the bathroom and wash my face, right? So I pulled some definitions for system, rhythm, routine, habit, and I'm not going to bore you by reading them all aloud, but the not so surprising conclusion is that they're all a version of the same idea. They're all a framework for doing something. They're a repeated pattern of actions, something that you can repeat and do again and again. And I did particularly like the definition of habit that I saw on dictionary.com, which is a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. So it's just something that we regularly do. Hard to give up can be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Habits can be a double-edged sword. There are healthy habits. There are not so healthy habits. There are habits that get us closer to our goals. There are habits that kind of block us from getting to our goals. So we want to be intentional about the patterns that we're building into our lives. We want to choose what they are and sort of construct them for ourselves, right? And I think that the reason I got so hooked into this book, honestly, I have had this book on my shelf for years, and I had picked it up and put it down and picked it up and put it down, and this time I picked it up and I just was fascinated. I was totally hooked and I could not stop reading it. And I think the reason is because I saw how I could use it not just to help myself, but to help other people. Because really, when we create a new system or when we're trying to incorporate a new rhythm into our days, we're essentially creating a new habit. We're creating a different way of doing things that we can repeat over and over again. So there are two main aspects of the book that I really want to share today that apply so much to the coaching work I do with moms. And the first is Rubin's concept of the 4 tendencies. So in the book, she lays out these 4 tendencies and suggests that most people are going to fall into one of these categories, and that what your natural tendency is can tell you a lot about how easy or how difficult it is for you to form new habits, and it can help you determine what strategies are most likely to work for you. And that is where I got really excited, because I was thinking, if I can have a short conversation with someone and get an idea of their tendency, then I know what tools they're most likely to gravitate toward and which tools are most likely to not work for them. And that just cuts out a huge part of the learning curve, right? So just really quickly, the 4 tendencies are this. So the first one is the upholder, and they are a classic rule follower. They want to meet all of the expectations, whether it's an expectation they have for themselves, whether it's an expectation someone else has put on them or society or whatever. They want to follow the rules. They want to uphold all of those expectations. Those people, she says, unsurprisingly, are pretty good at habits. The obligers need accountability. So if you're an obliger, you will probably follow through on whatever you tell someone else you're going to do. You'll follow through on those external expectations, but you have a hard time keeping commitments to yourself and meeting your own inner expectations. The questioner will resist expectations unless there's a good reason for it. So these are people who are going to want to kind of argue and debate the rules and be like, well, what's the point? Why do I need to do this, right? And then if they decide there's a good reason for it, then they'll go along with it. And then the rebels resist all expectations. They want their actions to feel like their own idea, their own choice every time they do something. And unsurprisingly, rebels can struggle a lot with habits. So when I first read this, I felt like I fell pretty solidly into the obliger category. In fact, I hired my sister back in the fall to help me with my content creation, because for a long, long time, I would come up with a plan, I would create some content for a couple of weeks, and then I just couldn't keep up with it. Like, if client work or client requests came up, if appointments came up, I would just give up the time that I had to work on my own business. And so I hired her, yes, to help me with some tasks, but it was also like a huge accountability thing. Like, if I know that I have a due date where someone else is waiting for me to do this work so that she can do her job, then I'm way more likely to do it. You know, this is also why I love working with a coach in my business. Someone holding me accountable for, hey, you said you were going to do this last week. Did you actually do it? So that is like totally the obliger description. And I think a lot of us probably fall into that category, especially as women. We are very good at taking care of other people and kind of putting our own things on the back burner from time to time. And then I also started noticing like a little bit of questioner tendencies in me, like when I don't want to do something, I'll be like, so this is kind of a funny example, but I don't like to play chess because I don't understand why the rules are what they are. Like how when you get to the end, someone can't put themselves in checkmate. They have to put themselves back in a safe position. I think it's bonkers. I think if someone makes a bad move and you can beat them, you should be allowed to beat them. Anyway, that's why I don't play chess. So I feel like I get a little bit of that questioner tendency popping in there from time to time anyway. So if you have an idea of which of those four, the upholder, obliger, questioner, or rebel, you might fall into, or which one you identified with, tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I'm super curious to see what different people's tendencies are. So that was kind of the first part that really stood out to me, was just being able to identify people in a pretty simple way. Obviously, there's more to all of us than one of these four categories, but it's a really cool framework, I think. Now, the rest of the book is dedicated to all kinds of different strategies to create accountability. Oh, another obliger. I see you. So, different strategies to create accountability, either to yourself or to someone else, and a lot of strategies on how to start a new habit and keep it up in the long term. So, this is the part that I found most fascinating. She shares a ton of different strategies. She shares notes about which tendencies they're most likely to work with. But it was such an exciting idea to me that I could talk to my clients about their tendency and then be able to recommend approaches and strategies and tools to give them the higher chance of success with their systems. Like, we all know there's trial and error when it comes to systems and routines. Like, there are a ton of different ways of doing things. You're going to try some things that work. You're going to try some things that don't. But if we can cut out some of that learning curve and get to some tools that are more likely to work for you the way you already are right now, then I think that is just so incredibly valuable. And I'm so excited to have kind of that tool in my toolbox. So really allows us to start from a more intentional place and cut out some of that experimentation at the beginning. There's always still going to be some. And your systems and your routines, they're going to change from season to season. You know, the way I work, the way I run my home when my kids were toddlers was way different than what I do now that they're both in school all day, right? Like, that's life. Things are going to change and we're going to shift and evolve in the process, right? So, excuse me. I also found some cool ways that I've already incorporated some of these tools into my work, maybe without really realizing it. So, you know, she talks about monitoring, how, you know, what you monitor is what's going to grow, right? And we've heard that in other places too. What you give your attention to grows. And so doing things like encouraging people to track their time or do a time audit when they feel like they're working more hours than they want to be. You know, doing that monitoring will let you know if you're on track with your goals about how many hours you want to work each week or how many hours a certain type of client project takes. You know, creating a weekly schedule ensures that your priority items are going to get done more consistently. You know, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen, that kind of a thing. And then knowing simple preferences for people, like whether someone prefers to work in big spurts or to stretch things out over time. Will guide things like how we create a content creation process. Do you want to sit down and batch a month's worth of content at a time? Or do you prefer to kind of like list out some topics and create as you go, right? And so a few weeks ago, I actually had a conversation with someone, and, we're moms. We started talking about cleaning our houses, real exciting stuff. And I shared with her that what I had found to work best for me was once a week we have family cleaning time. Everybody has their jobs. We put some music on. It takes like an hour or so, and like the main stuff in the house gets cleaned and taken care of. And she said, "Oh, I would hate that. I hate cleaning." I also hate cleaning. She goes, "So I do a little bit every day." She goes, "I do the bathrooms one day, I do the kitchen one day, I do this the next day." And so it's just an example of like, neither of us really enjoy cleaning. We know it needs to get done. We want to have a clean home, but the way we've chosen to go about it is different. Batching versus doing a little bit every day, different approaches worked better for each of us. So that's just one example of how someone's tendencies and preferences inform the systems that work best for them. There are so many more of these. It was just fascinating. I totally recommend the book if you're interested at all in habits or if you'd struggled with them before. And I really just kind of want to wrap up to say that when we understand our habits and when we understand the type of strategies and tools that work for us, we can set ourselves up for better success with our new systems and rhythms. And just that different strategies work for different people. We have different personalities, we have different abilities, we have different preferences. So if you've tried things before that didn't work for you, that's okay. If you've tried to set up systems, if you've tried to get into a routine and it didn't work, it's not a problem. It's part of the process. There is a path that will work for you. It takes a little experimentation and it takes a little bit of trial and error, but there is a path for each of us. We can all feel a little more organized. We can all feel some more ease and flow to our days and our weeks. And that is why I love having the opportunity to work one-on-one with women to create these simple, streamlined systems for home and business. Because together we can have that conversation and figure out what your natural tendencies are, talk about what worked for you in the past, what hasn't worked for you in the past, and put it all together like a puzzle to create a plan that will work for you. Not a bunch of other strangers, not a plug-and-play course, but specifically for you. So it starts with a free systems strategy session with me, and we'll just talk about which areas feel messy or overwhelming and why. That's really the beginning, right? What feels overwhelming and what do you wish it felt like instead? And how can we put you on a path to getting there? So I hope that this was helpful. Maybe your wheels are turning about some new habits or new routines you'd like to try. I would love to hear about them, so leave me a comment or send me a DM, and I will be back here next week with an exciting announcement. I have a workshop coming up, and I'm going to share all the details with you next week. So I will see you then. Have a great day.